So thank you, Kevin. Mr. Kevin Surtees, thank you for talking to us today. We do appreciate your time. I've explained about the questions. They're only simple questions and it's your perspective, so there are no right or wrong answers. First of all, can we kick off with, can you give us some idea about how you joined up? Because you didn't join up in the usual way.
Well, I have a great love for this country, Australia. And at that time that I joined up, they had their problems in Malaya and the likes of that. And I thought, well, maybe I could help out somewhat by enlisting and being up there.
And how did you go about enlisting?
Well, I went down to Melbourne. I lived in Wonthaggi at the time as a youth. I went to the Melbourne Town Hall, first of all, when I was 18. And when I got there, the people there said, well, you're too young, you must get your mother's signature to join the AIF. So you'll have to go back to Wonthaggi and get her signature and then come back and we'll join you up. And when I got home, my mother said, no, there's no way, you're too young to be in the AIF. So you'll have to wait another 12 months. So I said, all right, I shall take notice of your wishes and I will wait for 12 months, which I did. And then when the 12 months was up, I went down to Melbourne and enlisted in the AIF. And it wasn't very long after that that I was in Port Moresby with the 39th Battalion.
There's a big leap between when you signed up and when you were in Port Moresby with the 39th. What happened at that time? When you signed up, where did they send you?
We went down to Balcombe, was the first camp. Or we went to Caulfield Racecourse, and from there we were assigned to the areas, which happened to be Port Moresby.
And how did you get to Port Moresby from Balcombe?
Well, down to the Melbourne port and onto the Taruna, which was the ship that used to do the run from Melbourne to Tassie. And we were on the Taruna and sailed all the way. They pulled into Townsville. That was the only stop on the way up. And we weren't allowed off the ship at all. And the first stop was the one we got off at Port Moresby.
Did you have any idea what you were getting into?
Oh, well, in a way, I suppose. I realised that going to war would not be a picnic, and I soon found out that it wasn't.
But your feelings sailing up there, were they feelings of excitement or nervousness or...?
Well, a little bit of each, I would say. When I'd signed up, I realised that anything could happen, but there was excitement in going to Port Moresby and a little bit of nervousness about the thing.
And that was your first trip overseas?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
How did you feel arriving at Port Moresby? The whole different culture. Can you remember?
Well, it was exciting. It was exciting at the time. It was terribly hot and there was mosquitoes galore. And we were tucked away right out of the township itself in a little creek that run into the ocean, and lousy with mosquitoes and not very comfortable.
What equipment did you have to protect you from the mosquitoes?
Let me see. I think we had a type of oily stuff that we rubbed on our exposed parts of the body. It was all long sleeves and everything that nature, and a bit of I forget what the name of the stuff was now, but we rubbed it on all the face and exposed hands where the mosquitoes could get at us, and also we took quinine. I think it was quinine in the early days, and that turned out later on went to atabrine. We took atabrine tablets, but the quinine was pretty deadly stuff and a horrible taste, but we had to live with it.
And you took that daily?
Yes.
Daily. And there was enough supplies of that? You had plenty of it, did you?
Oh, yes, we had enough of it, if I can recall that. And a lot of the lads dodged it or tried to dodge it, and that we were supervised by the officers, and it was fairly difficult to get rid of it without having to swallow all the different things and that.
So the officers actually supervised you taking your medication?
Yes.
Was that important?
Yes.
Obviously.
Oh, yes.
Goodness.
I can't remember how long after we got to Moresby. We were out at Bootless Bay, and they would take working parties to go out and unload the ships in at Port Moresby. And on one occasion, we got caught on the ship, and of course when the nips came over, there wasn't time to let us get off the boat. The boat just took off out to sea, and we were on board it. And on this particular day that we got caught, there was 5 of our lads, being what we are, had gone down into the bowels of the ship to see what they could find, if there was any water to drink. And unfortunately, the nips came over and dropped their load of bombs, and it hit. The one bomb hit right down, went through the deck, and caught our 5 of our blokes that happened to be down in that area.
How did you get off it?
Well, I was on the tail end of the boat, and the bombs, they patterned bombs, the nips in those days. They just let the whole load go together. And they had, I think there was 10 or a dozen aircraft, and they just dropped the whole load of their bombs in one go. And out of that lot, there was only one bomb hit the ship. And I was up the tail end, and the bombs hit in about the middle of the ship, where these lads, and they were killed, and I suffered nothing.
How were you actually rescued, though, from that?
Oh, well, they didn't sink the ship. It just blew the inside of it to pieces.
Right.
And it after the nips, it flew on and gone away. Well, the ship just turned around and come back and dropped us off at the wharf. And we went back to our where we were camped.
Now, at this stage, were you actually 39th, or were you still there as part of the AIU?
No, we were 39th by that time. We became 39th the moment we stepped off that ship, and we were on staff for the 39th Battalion.
And how old were you?
I would have been 19 then, Betty, wouldn't it? 19? 19.
About 19, just a kid, really. So then you were in uniform, you were part of the 39th, and what happened next?
Well, at the time, out at Bootless, it was great for the first week or two. I just can't remember the exact dates now. But our stay at Bootless was very, very good. But then the call came that the Nips had landed up the coast and we were pulled in, and that started us up on the way to Kokoda.
And how did you get there?
We went on, they sent the AL 3-ton trucks, open trucks, picked us up and took us up through Moresby and out to the start of the Kokoda Track, which was I've forgotten the name now, but it was roughly 20 mile out of Port Moresby, I'd say, and what I can remember. And that was the start of the Kokoda Track campaign for us. The earlier lads of the battalion had flown from Moresby to Popondetta, which was down at the other end of the track. And they were already there in action by the time they got us moving to join them.
What can you remember about your supplies at this stage?
Well, they had the natives. This is when we got into the track. They had the army had these natives that did all the carrying, and they've done a wonderful job in that campaign. They carried huge loads, and the mountains up there were up and down like that, and down the other side. And those people that did all the carrying, they did a wonderful job.
But what did you have to carry?
We had to carry our equipment, the guns, and a pack on the back with a mosquito net, a bit more clothing, not a lot of clothing, but trousers and shirt, socks, which was quite enough, you know. It all mounted up, the little things, plus the war equipment, guns and bullets, grenades. It was all mounted up to quite a bit of stuff that we had to carry out.
So your own pack would have been considerable. Can you remember what it weighed?
Well, no, I couldn't offhand, but I would say offhand it would probably be 30-odd pounds, maybe more, but it was quite heavy.
Were these how were these supplies reinforced as you went along the track?
Well, they had a lot of natives. They just grabbed them out of their villages and so forth, and they made them, I think, more or less carry supplies and ammunition and the likes of that, following us up. And as the campaign was worked out, they were our way of survival.
So you were kept up to date with supplies very well then through the campaign, were you?
I wouldn't say very well, but we managed to survive. I wouldn't knock them. I wouldn't knock the top brass for not oversupplying us. But you've got to know the terrain to realise how difficult it was to keep supplies up to troops, as well as fighting equipment and the likes of that. But those people did a magnificent job.
You mean the natives?
Yes.
Yes. What about the food at this stage?
Well, the food would have been a little bit tight, particularly in the early days, where they had to organise a constant flow of supplies, and it was pretty difficult. The food was a little bit light on. As long as you got to feed, well, a tin of bully beef, something of that nature, baked beans.
And that was about the limit of your food. Can you think of anything else?
Biscuits. They had the little dog biscuits, we used to call them. They were very nourishing. I always, in one of the pouches on the equipment, that I always made sure I had a packet of them in there. And as we got to the tough stages, I'd nibble a biscuit because it got the saliva to move in your mouth. Where otherwise, if you didn't, well, your mouth becomes very dry. And I found that by chewing on these dog biscuits, as we call them, Arnott's wouldn't be very happy about that, I should imagine, but that is actual fact. And I found that they were a great help to me. I don't know whether very many other troops did the same thing, but it managed to get the saliva in your mouth moving and helped.
Well, you talk about being dry and needing the saliva. What did you have for fluids, for drinks?
Well, we had a little water bottle, which was part of army equipment that was on the side of your belt. And that would have been a bottle about that high and roughly about that wide. And you were able to have a mouthful of that whenever you really got dry, and it was a great bit of equipment.
Tea or coffee or other drinks?
Well, at night time, most times we'd stop at a village where there was an opportunity. They'd have fires, and that they would heat water so that we could get a cup of tea.
So you had the tea actually in your rations somewhere, did you? Or did you use the native?
Oh, well, no, they where they'd had army staff at these spots where you'd spend the night, and they would provide you with the tea. They had the big coppers, the old coppers we used to have. They'd have copperfuls of boiling water, and they'd make the tea, and you'd get a cup of tea. Or not a cup, we had no cups in those days, they were tin mugs. And you got your cup of tea or coffee. I forget now, well, I think it was all tea in those days. I can't remember whether we had coffee or just tea. But we were catered for in that way.
This is in the early part of the track. Did that continue right through?
Yeah, well, pretty well, yes. Yes, I would say most of the way up to short of Kokoda. And the closer you got to where the action was, well, the less hope there was of getting those sort of things. Particularly when the nip started the push from the bottom end of the aerodrome at Kokoda.
So what are your memories about when the action actually started then?
Well, some of the 39th had got right down into Kokoda, and we were supposed to come over the track and join them. But the Nips pushed them back, and they come back and joined us before we got right into Kokoda. We were at a place called Deniki, which was overlooking the aerodrome down below where our lads were in control. But at the time we arrived at Deniki and were looking down, the Nips had just started their push, and they pushed these lads out of the aerodrome back to where we were in positions at Deniki. And that was the actual start of the campaign for the Kokoda Track. And we were at Deniki, and roughly about this time, the hierarchy had decided that they would attack Kokoda and take Kokoda. We were the forward company that went down from Deniki down to the river, and we just got onto the river, and the Nips were sitting on the other side of the river, and they opened up with some machine guns and knocked us off, knocked some of our guys over, and that was the real start of the campaign. And we pulled back, and the Nips followed us up. They come across the river and followed us up, and that actually was the start of the whole of the campaign. And we got back to our positions on the slope at Deniki, and they had on our top left, up at the top left of the range, we had B Company there, some of the more of the 39th Battalion, and the Nips probably must have known quite a bit about the Kokoda Track in those days before they ever come across. So they come to us and we stopped them, and they've gone around to go round us up to the top, and they've run into B Company and they've been stopped there. And then they had the fresh troops, well equipped, and they attacked all the fronts from our company to B Company up on the hill until it got too hot for us, and everybody had to pull out. And that's where it all started. And the Nips, every time we went back a little bit, the Nips pushed us a bit more. And that occurred all the way through back to Isharaba, I think it was, and roughly a month later, I've sort of made that part of the campaign sound like it only happened a day or something of that nature. But we'd got to Isharaba, and by that stage, the AIF battalions came across the track from Moresby, and that saved our bacon, and goodness knows what else it saved. So their campaign then started. We were relieved by these AIF battalions, and they pushed the Nips all the way back. They finished up pushing them out into the sea, all the way back from where they'd landed.
But the 39th had been able to hold them up, though, hadn't it?
Yes. Yeah, we'd held them long enough for the AIF battalions to get through to us. And I can assure you there was no more pretty sight than see these blokes arrive.
And they would have had fresh stores and fresh supplies?
Oh, yes.
And
And
at that stage, did the 39th withdraw completely, or did they join forces with the...
Well, at that stage, there wasn't very many left of the 39th Battalion. They'd been killed, suffered from malaria, sicknesses, injuries. By the time the AIF had got to us, there wouldn't have been, well, I'd say maybe 50 left in the battalion.
Out of how many?
Out of, a battalion when it starts off, could be 1,500 troops. That would give you a bit of an idea what a campaign it was. It was pretty, well, at least scored it, but it was pretty tough.
So you had a lot of injuries. What medical support did you have?
Well, within the battalion itself, you had medical orderlies within the battalion, but as you would realise, what they could carry in the actual fighting zone would be pretty limited. They had a lot of help by the black people. They were bullied and made to do lots of things they wouldn't have liked doing, things that I wouldn't have agreed with. But they did a great job, and the wounded, they carried the wounded out. They were terribly frightened. Not that we were great braves or anything, but once the guns started shooting, they tried to get for their lives. But they had people in Angau, which is the people that looked after them, told them what to do and made them carry huge loads and things of that nature. They'd bully him into staying within the zone of where the fighting was. And if it had not have been for them, the black people, I feel that we would have been in much more trouble than we ever were.
Did they just help you by carrying people out, or were they able to provide medical aid of some sort themselves?
Yeah, well, they carried everything that we needed. I don't know whether they carried ammunition and stuff like that. They're not supposed to have done that, but I just wouldn't comment on that. But I suppose if they hadn't have been bullied when the shots started ringing out, whether they'd hung on, I don't know, but they were made to in any case. But wonderful, wonderful people.
So they were there because, or they were helping because they were bullied. Did you sense any resentment from them?
No, I think they were too frightened to be resentful of anything that they were asked to do. They were made to do it. They were stood over, more or less. They had no freedom in that respect.
So that was people from their own areas that were standing over them?
No, they were picked up by Angau. They were the people that were well, I suppose they were a type of army people, but yet they weren't. And it was their job to keep the supplies up to the troops in the front line. And of course they got the natives, and whether they liked it or loved it, they had to go and carry tremendous loads of equipment. They were not allowed by law to supply us with arms and equipment and that. It was all supposed to be just food, but I feel that they did a little bit more than that. which was deeply appreciated.
We talked a lot about the natives. Were you ever personally assisted by them?
No, not myself, no. But I saw the things that they had to do and the huge weights that they had to carry. And perhaps two of them would have a pole with a great box of maybe bully beef or whatever the food or equipment that was necessary for us. And they'd struggle up and down those mountains with things that I don't think a white man could possibly do.
And at this stage, were you still in small groups, or were there big groups of you? Or
No, we were very low. We were very low on troops at that stage. I'm talking about when the Japs were in full flight and we were being pushed back, and we've only got to maybe 40 or 50 blokes, and trying to hold them and still we knew that the AIF troops were coming, but we didn't know how far away they were because nobody would ever tell us. And we've got to Isharaba, which is possibly short of halfway back to Moresby. And we were just about done when the greatest view I'd ever seen in my life was these blokes from the 2nd 11th Battalion come through, fit as Mallee bulls, and just said, "You'll be right, mate." And they took over, and that started the campaign going back the other way, and the nips were on the short end of the stick then, because these are young fellas and been through the war in the Middle East and everything. Very hardened, good troops, great blokes.
did you have a lot to do with them? I mean, was there a lot of talking to the other troops, the new ones?
No. Oh, no, well, we spoke to them and thanked them and hoped them all the very best as they took up the attack from our retreat. But
There
we
wasn't
never...
a lot of talking.
No, well, you couldn't do much talking in those days, really, not because of silence, but because of the fact you've just climbed up a mountain like that, and they've come back down the other way. And it is one of the hardest things you could possibly do in life. So you didn't feel like being very active with the tongue.
And what about the weather while this is happening?
Well, nearly every night it would rain, because you're in the mountains, and at that time of the year, practically every night it would rain. So unless you had something special, you had a wet tail every night.
And the mud? Because
Yes, mud. When you're in the mountains, as I said, with the rain at night, and you start to get people walking on the same spot, it chews up the mud. And we finished up, you'd be into mud at least that, maybe higher, on your feet. And all sorts of footing under the mud too. You had to be terribly careful, be on your face or on the broad of your back.
And how did the skin on your feet stand up to all this mud, constant water and mud?
Well, in my case, it wasn't too bad, but your feet become as white as a lily and soft. And, well, I had tinea in between my toes, and that through not being able to dry and wash and things, and no doubt all the troops that did the Kokoda Track would have been the same way. It was no picnic in any respect. It had no respect on your body. It was very nasty.
I've seen some photos Damien Parra took of the time up there. Did you personally come in touch
with Damien Parra?
Just for a few minutes. He took that photo. It's back on that's still on the wall there, Betty?
Minari.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, he took that photo. He come through through our troops, and he'd have a few words with you and ask how the going was and how far it was, and would he get there tonight. And totally good bloke. But I thought to myself at the time, he's too brave for his own good, because you can visualise that not far behind us with the nips coming forward, and he's just left us and gone forward to get an idea of what the campaign was like. A very, very brave man.
The native gardens get a lot of mention in the books. Did you come across native gardens, or were you very involved?
Yes, we passed through them.
And what were they about?
Well, they had their sweet potatoes, fruit, but we were told not to touch any of their food at any price. Well, we stuck to it. I don't know what other troops may have done, but we didn't touch it.
So that was an order, was it?
Yes.
That everybody
Yes.
knew not to touch that sort.
That's right.
The food on the track on the way back, after you'd been relieved, what did that improve at that stage?
Well, yes, it improved slightly, because the main thing was hot cup of tea at that stage. And they had the big coppers, which had been carried over behind us, and they had set spots where they considered was a day's march. They was more or less set that distance, and it was a long distance. And we deeply appreciated that we were able to get a hot mug of tea. And as I said, what I always carried in one of the pockets, the packet of these dry biscuits, and they were a saver.
I read somewhere that the Salvation Army had cups of tea, and did you
Yes.
come across the Salvation
That's
Army?
what I was saying. The big coppers, they
That
had
was the Salvation Army.
yes,
that was the cop-
yes, yes. Well, I wouldn't be a damnant on that, but I know that we struck the salvo officers along the track at different spots, whether they were the organisers of the boiling coppers. You know the coppers I mean,
Yes.
the big coppers, this big, and they were magnificent. They would generally have something else besides that, but I just can't remember what they used to give us as well. But a lot of kind words, of course.
And that was all free. There was no cost.
Oh yes, yeah, there was nothing, no cost in that. And they had a very busy life because, particularly when the other troops, the AIF troops, come through behind and start to push the Japs back, their tasks become huge because of the casualties that our people sustained.
Perhaps I'm jumping around a little bit, but the photo that we mentioned Damien Parra took, the parade at Minari, you're in that photo. Can you remember what your feelings were at that stage when you lined up for that final parade?
Oh, well, we just about had the gong by then, if I could use a rough phrase. We knew that we were very lucky to be alive, and rather pleased that we were relieved out of the firing line. Well, very pleased to be out of the firing line for what short time it may have been, which turned out to be quite a long time.
But you went on from there to join another battalion, didn't you?
Yes. What happened in that regards, the 39th Battalion was ripped to pieces. There was hardly anybody left within the battalion. A lot of them struck down with malaria, all the diseases that can be had were found on the Kokoda Track. And when we come out of, we were relieved of the action, I think there would have been, roughly 30 of us at the most would have been still left in the battalion when it was relieved. And we got back to Moresby, and I forget what happened then. Oh, the AOF troops had come through and taken over from us. And I don't think it was all that much longer before we were relieved and what was left of the battalion was sent home for leave. We were sent to, landed at Cairns, stayed there for a very short period. I just can't remember how long it was. And then sent home for 4 weeks leave. And that was almost the end of the 39th Battalion, because when we came back from leave, we were based in Cairns, and not long afterwards, the few that was there marched out of the camped area where we were, down with the 2nd Battalion, and became on staff with them. Finished the war with the 2nd Battalion, which was still tough going.
What are your views about mateship or the support you got from your fellow soldiers?
Well, I would say that the greatest bunch of young blokes you could ever want to meet and fight a war with. Both battalions, great blokes. Excuse me.
How were they showing that?
Oh, well, I suppose you could say that you could place your life in the hands of most of those people, and they would do their very best to save your life. I could not speak any more highly than say that the lads in the 2 battalions I served in were really great Australians.
Just 2 more questions. What would you say, the whole horrible experience, what would you say the best experience of it was, the best part of it was, the whole horrible episode?
Well, I suppose when the AIF troops relieved what was left of our battalion, the 39th Battalion, it was a great sense of relief. Because all these young blokes all got all the equipment that we never had, and were young and fit, and a sense of relief. You've got no idea when you've had death within inches of you, day after day after day, sort of, to see these young blokes come and say, well done, mate, and went through. I would never, ever forget it.
So the final question What do you think should be remembered for coming generations?
Well, I feel that anybody that ever pulled a military boot on deserves the greatest respect that could ever be paid to anybody. Because some in war may have an easy role, and others can have the real bitter stages of war. And I thank the good Lord for my life. I went through the mill and very fortunate. A lot of my good mates are still up there. And a lot of servicemen, ex-servicemen, would have broken their necks to have the opportunity to do what we went through and suffered. But through circumstances, we're never able to do it.
Mm.
So, the luck of the draw.